Outbreeding devices. This topic is taken from the chapter of sexual reproduction in the flowering plants. Guys, this is very easy topic and you can understand this very easily. So first of all, we should know what is self-pollination and what is cross-pollination. As we all know that cross-pollination is very much better than self-pollination, because cross-pollination gives rise to variety of flowers and fruits, whereas self-pollination, the capability of plant producing the flower or fruit decreases. Okay, first of all, let us understand what is self-pollination. Basic transfer of pollen from anther to stigma of a same flower, whereas cross-pollination is the transfer of pollen from anther of one plant and stigma of another plant. So here in cross-pollination, anther and stigma are present in the different plant, whereas in the self-pollination, pollen grains are transferred from anther to stigma of. As we all know, when you do continued self-pollination, it may lead to the weakening of the species as well as its varieties. Flower and fruit production also decreases, as well as it will affect the quality of the offspring, which is very bad. So we must do more and more cross-pollination, avoid the self-pollination as much as possible. So here, plants have developed many devices that will help to promote the cross-pollination and inhibit the self-pollination. Let us understand what are those methods. These type of methods are called as outbreeding devices. These are the devices that plants have developed to promote the cross-pollination and to inhibit or avoid the self-pollination. So, repeated self-pollination leads to inbreeding depression. Okay, so continued self-pollination may lead to the weakening of the species, or the variety may be down. So this is what known as inbreeding depression. Okay, development does not take place in self-pollination. So plants have developed methods to prevent self-pollination. They have developed some important methods to promote the self-pollination. Pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of the same flower. What is this? This is the self-pollination. We should avoid self-pollination, right? Then gytonogamy. Gytonogamy is the transfer of pollens from anther of one flower to stigma of another flower in the same plant. So gytonogamy is also the self-pollination. So we should avoid this also. Then xenogamy is the transfer. Third one is xenogamy, right? It is the transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of the different plant. As it occurs in the different plant, so it is the cross-pollination. So we should not avoid it, right? Then autogamy is prevented by following these ways. These are the three ways to prevent the autogamy. Pollen release and stigma receptivity not coordinated. So what is pollen release? Release of pollens. What is stigma receptivity? Ability of a stigma to support for germination, further germination. And what is not coordinated? See, coordination means development takes place at a same time. But here what happens? Development does not take place at same time, means here it is not synchronized. Okay, in some species what happens, pollen release and stigma receptivity are not at all synchronized. In this case, either the pollen is released before the stigma becomes receptive, or stigma becomes receptive much before the release of pollen. This is what happens. They do not take place at the same times, so they are not at all coordinated. Either the pollen is released first or stigma is released. Stigma receptivity takes place later. This is what happens. Then, different positioning of anther and stigma. Stigma and anther are present at different position. This is the another method where anther and stigma are placed at different position so that the pollen does not come in contact with the stigma of the same flower. By this way we can prevent the autogamy by placing it at different position so that pollen does not come in contact with the anther, come in contact with the stigma of the same flower. Next method is production of unisexual flower. As we all know that unisexuality always promotes the cross pollination, so of course it will prevent the autogamy, that is self pollination, and it will promote the cross pollination, as the production of unisexual flowers is cross pollination. Then here are some ways to prevent both autogamy and geitonogamy. So autogamy and geitonogamy are self-pollination. Let us find out the ways to prevent both of them. Okay, so first one is presence of male and female flowers on different plants such that each plant is either male or female dioecious. This mechanism is present in several species of papaya. So let us take example of papaya to prevent both autogamy and geitonogamy. What happens in the papaya species? Male and female flowers are present on the different plants. Then what happens? Male and female flowers are present in the different plants, then automatically autogamy and geitonogamy is easily prevented. Very simple.